I'm Norma Jean Shaw with the Royal Examiner, and we are talking today with Warren County Sheriff's candidate Mark Butler. Mark, we talked a long time ago, and you've announced your campaign since then, and folks would like to hear from you, so thanks for stopping by today.
Always.
Let's talk about your campaign.
Our campaign it's been probably one of the most humbling things as a law enforcement officer that I think anyone could have, is this support from people with such character and such honor that I respect deeply. I've been blessed.
So you announced last summer, I believe, and you've been doing a lot of one-on-one time, knocking on doors and getting to know people face to face.
Yes, that is actually was our main objective and the way we wanted to run our campaign. I didn't want to ask people for money. I believe Warren County spent enough money in the last few years. Mm-hmm. So, I really don't believe that the sheriff election and a local election like that should cost a fortune. I shouldn't be having to ask people for money for it. So I refuse to ask people for money. If you want to donate, feel free. It's on the website. We could use $1 here and there, but it is what it is. We're not going to ask people for money.
That's pretty refreshing because a lot of people think when you run a campaign, you need to go out and ask for money. So, and I've heard people say that they appreciate that you haven't said, "Hi, I'm running for sheriff, and I'd like to have a donation."
I'd rather give you the shirt than I would charge you for it. I'd rather give you the sign. It means more to me that way.
Mm-hmm. So, talking to people face to face like you've been doing, and I know you've been down at the flea market and some public events, just one-on-one with people. What kinds of things are you hearing from people saying they're concerned about and wanting in a new sheriff?
Well, I mostly what we've been hearing is status quo. People want change. I believe we are the change. And when I say we, it's not just me. One person can't do this. It has to be a collective, the community actually getting together, coming up and putting forth their vision of how they want to live. And what's been so humbling is many of them are on the same vision as we've set out, like in our strategic plan. Mm-hmm. We've been working diligently. I have a strong group of individuals, and we're working diligently, not just on campaigning, but how we can make Warren County better, how we can implement different programs, how we can bring the community and get them involved. And, I'm very honored to be this point of the spear.
So this strategic plan, 2019-2020, so you're not just thinking about the campaign, you're thinking about ways to step in and implement a plan right away to make life better for Warren County?
Well, isn't that leadership? Leadership is actually being committed to the vision, to your goals, and driven. And if you don't have a plan, who's going to follow you?
That certainly, that sounds like an astute way to go about things. Let's talk about leadership. You have about 30 years of experience in law enforcement?
Between that and the military, yes.
Okay. So you are an Army veteran?
I am.
And you were in the Army for?
I was in the Army about 6 years,
mm-hmm.
On convalescent, and I had an accident, disabled veteran, mm-hmm. and it took me about 2 years to recover.
Okay.
Before I actually gained the strength of my arm again. But most of my time in the military was leading as a junior NCO or a non-commissioned officer, mm-hmm. leading troops, being responsible for millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment, running training rooms, and so on and so forth. So I was able to actually take schools of leadership, and if anyone understands military and military leadership, mm-hmm. or has been in it, mm-hmm. they would understand that a non-commissioned officer, that core is a bond, mm-hmm. and it actually is the backbone of the military. I'm proud of that, true. Actually.
Yeah, well, yeah. Having been married to a Marine, I know that that's drilled into you, and you don't ever get over it.
So. I was raised by one, so.
Yeah, so you know. Let's talk a little bit about, you hear lots of things going on and rumors and that type of thing. I've heard some deputies say that they're really terrified of what happens when a new sheriff comes in. Now, we've talked before in a different interview, and you vowed already that you do not have any plan to come in and just clean house at this point.
It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. Officers get up every day, put a badge on, put a gun on, kiss their wife and children or family goodbye, and then have to worry about because they voted for someone else, if they're going to lose their job and their career? That makes no sense. It makes none. My goal is to incorporate everyone in that sheriff's office, put them in the best position possible to succeed. But also they have to have standards. If people aren't held to standards, then you really don't have a solid core, and you're never going to have the professionalism you need to run a sheriff's office. So if they're not held to or don't hold up to the standards, then we'll have to deal with that as it comes.
Okay. I imagine that morale is not really great right now currently in the Sheriff's Department. We've had some stories in the news. Rural Examiner has been reporting pretty heavily the situation with the EDA and a lawsuit that was filed. The sheriff was named as one of the defendants in a $17.6 million lawsuit. I've heard from some of the family members of deputies who say they feel ashamed to put on their uniform and go to work, and that's pretty sad. Can you comment on that, or would you prefer not to?
I really don't want to comment on what's going on with the EDA. That's an ongoing case, and I believe what I said at the Board of Supervisors, I just said let's quit pointing fingers. By pointing fingers at people, whether it be Dan Murray, Doug Stanley, or whomever, Brian Madden, it's reckless. It's immature. I mean, the case is being investigated by one of the most elite law enforcement entities in our country, and really in the world. Let's let them do their job. Once the facts are out, then we'll be able to make a decision. But too many times society gets on social media and gets on certain areas and they start blasting their opinions, and it really comes to a part where it's almost slander.
So that's what was the impetus for you to go and speak at the Board of Supervisors, so you could speak to your leaders directly and also to the public? Yeah,
I wanted to speak to them and say, hey, let's take one. And what I said was one of the main principles and characteristics of leadership: seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. But by doing that, we have a problem. Our problem is our community does not trust our government or our law enforcement at this point in time, and rightfully so. I'm not going to bash Danny McEathron either, but rightfully so, with what's going on in our area and our situation, they have a right to doubt because they've been misled. But the facts will come out. But what all I ask them to do is, instead of raising taxes, look at the budget and see if we can adjust it. Let's probably try solving the problem instead of pointing fingers at everybody. Pointing fingers is not how you solve problems.
Well, that sounds like a good leadership principle. Now, you did mention something about social media. Let's talk about that, because there has been so much negativity surrounding the news stories that have been out there lately. A lot of bullying, a lot of pointing fingers, a lot of name calling, and even the stories that the Rural Examiner has posted. We've had to go back pretty frequently and monitor the comments and delete quite a few of them. But how are things going with your campaign? I understand that you probably have had some comments.
Oh, we've had quite a few. We've even had threats. But one thing I will say is this: I stand fast. We will not participate in the juvenile social media antics that are going on. We're not going to respond to them, and we ask that anyone who supports us, please don't get involved in it, because we're not going to lower our standards just to have some, back and forth on social media. I'd rather speak to you face to face and directly. Ask me the question, I'll answer it.
So, do you think there have been instances where some of your supporters have been trolled, or maybe your campaign has been trolled?
I would have to say I would definitely believe that's happened. And I believe there's three sides to every coin. There's one person's side, the other person's side, and there's a truth somewhere in the middle. But we're not going to be involved in it, not whatsoever. I'm very proud of our vision. I'm very proud of my resume. Am I perfect? No. But only God and I will decide that when it comes time. But what I am here to do is this: I'm here putting everything out on the line because I believe in this community. I've been here for 20-some years. I've coached football here. I've given everything I have from the shirt off my back for the community. And I'm proud of that fact. And I will not allow others to diminish what me or my family or anyone else has tried to do. And I won't take part in it.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the time that you have spent in the community. Of course, you travel to Fairfax every day to work, but you said that you have coached and you've raised your family here in the community.
I have. It's been it really has been great. I'm very proud of my children, my wife. I've always been a great father. Now, if you're doing undercover as much as I did internationally and so forth, and running that type of magnitude at federal cases, it's you spend a lot of time away, but my wife has been very strong. It's put a lot of pressure on it. But I'm very proud of my family. My daughter works very hard. She works very hard, and she's always been a rock. Very proud of her for that. Both of my boys have served in the military. One is currently serving, and one just got back from Afghanistan. So, if they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, then I'm a proud dad.
Well, that's awesome, but the military service, I think that kind of runs in the blood. And you said you were raised by a military guy. You alluded to something I wanted to talk about. You have done some undercover work on a federal level.
I have.
And I would like for you to speak about that. Let the constituents know a little bit about that, as much as you can speak about it, of course. And also the fact that in the past, you don't have it now because you wanted to focus on your campaign, but you have taught officers all around the country on all kinds of topics that are really important for a modern police officer to know.
Yeah, we're very proud of it, actually. It started out in the sheriff's office, and like I think I mentioned at one of my meet and greets, I was a part of the criminal investigations unit of Fairfax County. Very elite unit, probably some of the best training I've ever received, and mentorship was just phenomenal. And this was after 9/11. So my focus, I'd done the leadership, I'd led men, I'd done that, but I really wanted to be a good cop. And you know how everybody was after 9/11. We wanted to save the world. We didn't want it to happen again. So I really got into that and I focused on that. And I was asked to go be a supervisor. And it just wasn't my thing at the time. I had really only been in law enforcement probably 3 or 4 years. And I really wanted to focus on being the best police officer I could be and use my talents of human intel and so forth and take that towards researching terrorism and so forth. And that's what I did. And I was asked, well, hey, maybe you should be a police officer. And it wasn't, you got to leave. It was, maybe, Mark, there's more opportunity. So I actually applied for Herndon and was hired 13 days later. That was a quick turnaround. I didn't really, monetarily, my wife probably wasn't happy about it. But it put a lot of stress that way, and I got to work, and once I got into Herndon, that was when MS-13, 18th Street was extremely prevalent, and I learned a great deal from many detectives like Detective Saw, Detective Comfort, and these guys teach all over the world. So I'm very proud of that fact. By doing that, we were able to get into some other things, and I was able to take the experiences and get into human trafficking. And our case started actually here, one of our leads, and it really got us into one of the largest at the time human trafficking cases in the country. That I actually was not only undercover but case agent.
And people don't realize that here in Warren County that things like that happen, and that's really striking. And to have a candidate who is so versed in such high-tech intel. You also, I believe, have taught in the past fraudulent documents.
Yes, ma'am.
To bring that kind of experience to the Sheriff's Department would certainly be a great plus.
Well, one of the proudest things we do is I get calls from guys from all over the country that I have trained, have taken my fraudulent document classes, organized crime classes, or even undercover classes. And they'll send me a picture of ID and, hey, is this fake? Is this real? What should I do? How should I do it? What's the code? And I really take pride in that. I've had a great career. Win or lose November 5th, I believe we'll do really well November 5th. I'm very proud of it. But win or lose, my cup's full. I'm happy. I'm proud of what we've achieved. And, teaching has really, I think you learn more sometimes teaching because you have to prepare yourself more. But being a part of so many different agencies and working with the Florida Highway Patrol, working with many departments from Georgia, South Carolina, Michigan, Detroit, Boston, and Texas, and Houston, and just so on and so forth. It's been really rewarding.
Okay. Let me ask you about. Will you be putting out any videos on Facebook or anything like that to speak to your constituents, or do you think you'll just continue to do the one-on-one that you have been doing all along?
I like the one-on-one. I really do. I like the personal aspect of it. I think if you look at the last year and a half, my platform hasn't changed. Nothing of what we're saying has changed. The only thing we're doing is we're actually finding more and better ways and opportunities, like the strategic plan, to actually put that platform into process. So I'm really happy with it. I really enjoy just talking to the people, and that's the sheriff I want to be.
Now, you will not be in the office as much as you'll be out on the road with your other men and women?
I like to say, I don't believe, I'd like to say no, I won't be in the office. I believe working with the officers, and I guarantee you'll probably see me on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Did you hear that, Mrs. Butler?
She already knows it. I've been doing it for years.
You've been doing it for almost 30 years. It's not going to change, right?
No, if I believe you watch in our sheriff's office, if there's a guy who has a young family, if I have to work his shift, I'll work his shift for him. That's what leaders do. Leaders lead by example, and they set the example. So I want people to hold me accountable for that.
Well, I think that there are some positive things. There are a couple of things I want to talk about.
Sure.
I did have your opponent, Jason Poe, in the other day, and I asked him about some campaign finance questions I had about his submissions. And one of the final things that he said to me was, I hope that you are as hard on the other candidates as you are on me. So I just wanted to talk about your campaign, I'm trying to get the words out. Right. It's the end of a long day, but your Board of Election submissions for all of your financials. Thank you.
We have a phenomenal financial officer. It was one of the very first persons I looked at. She has been running Fairfax County's campaigns probably since the early 90s. She was very, very thorough. We found one mistake that we had, and it was more of a misunderstanding. We did an event at North Warren, and it was in kind. We documented it properly, but once we started seeing, we were found out that actually 501c, it could jeopardize them. So we immediately got together as a committee and said, hey, how can we rectify this? Because we don't want to put their 501c in jeopardy. That's wrong. So we decided to write a check for it and pay for it.
So it's already been taken care of.
Oh, yes. And, sometimes it takes a little longer when you're reviewing, doing amendments and so forth. But, we're really trying to stay on above. I don't believe anybody is above the law in any way. So we're really just trying to do everything the correct way.
Well, I did want to ask you about that because Mr. Poe did mention that there was an error, and I assumed he was talking about you and not Mr. Licklider. We haven't talked to Mickey yet, but he did ask that I ask about you and Mickey, and so I did want to ask about that when we sat down and talked.
Well, we definitely go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and we've made a couple amendments, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, and that's why it's there. They want to keep everybody honest,
right.
and that's why they don't come down on you with a hammer. They just ask that you amend things, and then it's taken care of.
Right, and I'll answer for anything.
Okay. What's next for you? Do you have any events coming up?
We do. We have a couple events. Most of it's meet and greets. And like I said, Mr. Keller and a lot of other businesses are reaching out. And the reaching out has just become really busy. I mean, the next 2 months were slammed, sometimes double booked. But going and speaking to the people, I really enjoy that in a social setting, so they can ask me freely and don't feel like they're under any type of scrutiny or pressure.
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely a people person.
I do like.
You seem to come alive when you're with people. So.
And actually, coaching football was probably the biggest thing. It was probably where I got more to it.
And now some of those kids are grown up and have their own kids. So.
It is, right? And then I'll probably be grandfather soon too, probably.
Oh yeah, well,
we'll keep that
breaking news,
right?
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming here to talk to us. A lot of people were really asking us to talk to you since we talked to Mr. Poe, and I believe Mickey will be coming in within the next week. And I know that you had already agreed. You, in fact, were the first person who said that you would like to participate in debates.
I'd love to.
And now Mr. Poe says he will, so we'll ask Mickey when he comes along to have a sit down. After the slate has closed, when we're sure that everybody who's going to announce as a candidate will, then I believe Royal Examiner is going to have some debates, and we'd like to set it up so that we can have some questions that we ask all of you, and then maybe have some have the audience hand in questions on cards so that we can take some of those and give you some questions on the spot from the audience.
If you look at pretty much every meet and greet I do, I don't speak from a note card. I don't speak from a notepad.
Right. Well, the questions would come from the audience on a note card.
And that's what but what I'm saying is, I enjoy that.
Sure.
Because if you can't answer that way, are you really ready for this position?
Well, it goes back to your L word, leadership, and your strategic plan. So
we like to be really prepared. One thing I will say is, and I'd like to say this, is you know, this is a stressful campaign, and I know I did watch Jason's video, and I know he's got a lot of things on his plate. We both do.
Sure.
But I'm not running against Jason. And everybody asks me, what do you mean? I'm running on our platform. I'm running on our vision.
Sure.
I'm not running against him. This isn't a bashing against anyone. This is just, I'm running on what we believe in, what we've put together, and that's how I'm going to continue to run it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I just wish some of the people who are making the nasty messages on Facebook and in public would say, you know, he's terrible or he's terrible. If they would just listen to what you're saying and what Poe is saying, you're both running on what you believe and what your principles are. And it's almost like a foot race. He's running and you're not trying to kill each other sideways. You're just running forward to the end. I mentioned
Josh Gully asked me the other day to comment on, and I guess it's coming out soon, but about the EDA and Jason, and I explained to him, I said, my opinion, no, I don't believe what Jason calling out certain people. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. It's not our position right now. And it shouldn't be a soapbox to bring someone out. Let the investigation take its toll. But and the EDA as well. And I'm just not going to comment on what Jason's doing, what he's not doing. We have our own campaign to run. And you know, with people, you say a lot of people are upset right now, Norma Jean.
They are.
And our county is torn, and we're looking for things. I'm not going to bash the leadership. I'm not going to bash the leadership in the sheriff's office. You know, I'm not standing in their shoes. I don't know what it's like. I've never been a part of an agency that's been through this. So those deputies, I'm sure they are a little embarrassed, and I feel for them because I've trained with, and I've trained a lot of them, and I feel for them. They're my brothers in blue, and I'll always have their back.
I'm sure they like to hear that message because right now the county is going through a lot, and it's going to take some time for things to settle down and for people to heal. But like you say, we've got some good investigation going on now.
And you know what? Let them do their job. The end result will come out. That's our justice system.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, at the end result, But that's what it is, and it's served us pretty well for a couple hundred years. So I think we should stick with it.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for stopping by. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish our conversation?
No, ma'am. As always, it was a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting everybody out there and come see what we're about.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And that's a talk with Mark Butler, and you've learned a little bit more about him if you didn't know before. And we'll talk to Mickey Licklider coming up soon.